what I was trying to say is that why do I have this color? Yeah. So I have a hammer which is at certain angle. So it's not a Thor hammer, so it looks a little different. So this is how it will look, but if so, again, coordinate axis. So this is X, this is Y, this is Z. So we are looking at this hammer in XZ plane, right? But if I look at in the YZ plane, then this hammer will have this kind of shape. So, although not exactly, but I'm trying to give you a view. So I hope you can imagine how the hammer looks like. And so this hammer will be at certain angle, and then it will be, so it is somehow fixed here. So maybe there is a lever or something here which blocks it or locks it. And then you have a platform here where you keep the specimen. So again, this platform also you will have to visualize in a different plane. So on this, there will be a fixture on which you can put the specimen, and the specimen we will discuss. So the specimen is something like this, okay? And then this hammer will fall. So you unlock this thing, and this hammer will fall freely, and it will hit the specimen, and it will break the specimen. And then, so if there is no specimen here, this hammer should go uninterrupted in this direction, and it will be consuming all its potential energy, whatever you have given it, right? So rho g h, whatever is there, that will be consumed. So it will be transmitted at kinetic energy, and it will go up to a certain height. But if some amount of energy is consumed by the specimen due to breaking it, then it will not go to that amount of height, right? So if a free uninterrupted fall goes to certain height, let's say h, then that is shown on a dial, which is here. So there is a dial here which is like a wall clock, and it tells you the energy. So if it goes to certain height, then that energy is 0 joules. And if there is a sample and it breaks the sample, then of course it will not go to this height. So it will go to another height, h dash, which will be lower than h. And that can be calculated, that because of this difference, how much energy has been consumed. And that energy will be shown on the dial, and that will be the energy consumed in the Charpy specimen. So let's say that will be 100 joules. So you get the idea how it is happening? What is the concept here? No? You couldn't get anything? Suraj, bolo kuch?
Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
Okay, chalo, at least one person got it. All right. So again, this is so I hope this idea is clear. I want all of you to write this calculation, that how do you calculate if there is a difference in height, how do you calculate the energy consumed in the specimen failure? So this you have to write in your lab report, which you will be submitting next week, Wednesday. Okay. And you will also be writing about the procedure, how we conduct the test. So whatever you see in the video or whatever you understand, it's all right. So I want to see what you have understood from the live tests or pre-recorded tests, what we have shown you. So procedure you have to write, and so probably we will be testing 3 specimens. And apart from this, there can be other things. So let me come to the specimen. So specimen, the standard specimen has specified dimension, which is, does anyone know the dimension of the specimen? No. Okay. So this is 10 millimeters, this is 10 millimeters, and this length is 55 millimeters. So this is the standard dimension of the specimen. Although it's not just a rectangular bar, there is a notch in the specimen usually. So the notch is here at the center, and the notch angle is 45 degrees. It can be 60 degrees, but according to the standard, it should be 45 degrees. Yeah. So that is a notch, and if you look at the notch from the side view, so it will look like this. So this angle is 45 degrees, and the depth of the notch, so from the surface to the notch tip, that depth is 2 millimeters. And the root radius, what is the root radius? When I say the root radius of the notch should be 0.2 mm, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by root radius? So everyone will remain silent. Ishika,
Then,
what is the root radius?
the radius at the end of the notch, like.
Yes, but why do we have a root radius? Why can't we have no root radius? No idea?
But if there is no root radius, then that point would be very sharp, which would
Yes.
to localize deformations at that point.
That is what exactly we want. We want the sharpest crack possible.
So it's hard to make.
Yes.
Like.
So whatever technique you use, except one, whatever technique you use, at some scale it is gonna be, it is gonna have a root radius. So you can, so if you are doing electric discharge machining with a wire cutting, so the smallest wire will also have a diameter of its own, right? So if you are cutting it with a wire, then wire will give its own root radius at the tip, and usually the smallest wire is 0.2 millimeters, so that you can have. So in our specimen, the dimensions are 55 10 cross 10, but the notch is not made in such particular fashion because it requires sophisticated machining. So usually it should be 45 degrees. Our notch is also 2 mm deep, but the angle is not 45 degrees. And the root radius is also greater than 0.2 millimeters. So that is the standard size. Again, you can have a little bit, so we can bend the rules a little bit because we have practical reasons. Sometimes material is not available, and sometimes you cannot make material in so much amount that you can make a specimen which is of this dimension. So you can do miniature testing. So there are sub-size Charpy tests where usually the dimensions remains 55 cross 10, but then you can decrease the thickness to 5 millimeters. Sometimes you can decrease the thickness to 2 millimeters also. There have been trials where people have actually decreased these dimensions also. But even if you change the thickness dimension, it shows tendency to deviate from the results which you will get from a standard dimension. So there is a size effect here. Why do we have the size effect? Is because Charpy impact test, of course, can be, so the basic idea is to find out how much energy is absorbed in breaking the specimen. But the most often application of this kind of testing is done for steels. So, and in steels, and now it is also used for polymers, but not Charpy. There is a different form of impact testing for polymers. But for metallic materials, usually this is very, very old and almost ancient and still being used kind of testing we have. So in BCC materials, you see a transition from a mode of failure. So at very small temperatures, very lower temperature, not small, you will see the material will be breaking in a brittle fashion. And at a very high temperature or comparatively high temperature, you will see the materials to be failing in ductile fashion. It doesn't happen with FCC or HCP crystals. Okay. So if I draw, what do I get from the impact testing machine? From impact testing machine, I get the energy, right? So I can write here, it is impact toughness or impact energy. So the values will be in joules, but this is also called impact toughness. And here you can place temperature. So, so there are three types of toughness usually we talk about. One is the tensile toughness. Another is impact toughness. And then there is fracture toughness. And these three are not the same. Okay, tensile toughness, you know, if you have stress strain diagram, then the area under that curve is the tensile toughness. Okay, so the difference between tensile toughness and impact toughness is, first is that in impact toughness, you are loading the material with a higher velocity. So strain rate effect is going to be there, inertia effect is going to be there. So these are the differences because of the strain rate. And then there is another difference that in tensile testing, you don't have a notch, but in impact testing, you have a notch. In fracture toughness, that's an altogether different thing, which we have studied in MM302. So if you remember, K1C was a measurement of fracture toughness, which is sigma root pi A, F of A by W. So this is altogether different property. Although it is a measurement of toughness, but the basic idea is you should have a crack definition. All right, Avinash, if you are ready, we will join in 5-10 minutes. So,
okay, sir.
Okay, so fracture toughness is a measurement of toughness, but it requires a crack to begin with. So that's the idea of fracture toughness. Impact, you don't have to have a crack, it's a notch. There is a difference between notch and crack, although at some scale both are same, but still notch is a notch and crack is a sharper notch, is a very, very sharp notch. Or you can say that notch is a very blunt crack. So in that way, hole will also be a crack, but we can't use that hole as a definition of crack and fracture toughness. So fracture toughness is a different toughness. Impact toughness, you know what it is now. So there is an effect of strain rate, there is an effect of inertia, there is an effect of notch. So if you plot impact energy versus temperature, and temperature is increasing in this direction, so you will get a curve like this for BCC alloys. Okay. For FCC, you might get something like this. So not much change. And for HCP also, you might get something like this. So a straight line, so it's not changing with temperature. So why it happens in BCC only that there is a change in the energy absorbed with rise in temperature? No idea. Ariman?
Yes, sir.
Why do you think we have a rise in impact energy in BCC alloys and not in FCC and HCP?
The sample is transforming from fracture मतलब means in
What? Sample is transforming?
yes, sir. When we increase temperature, sir, then the fracture energy is going to increase because it is
It will
going
in,
to because it is
going in
going to
where?
ductile fracture, sir.
Yes. But so BCC alloy at lower temperature, it is going to have a brittle fracture. If we are at higher temperature, it is going to have a ductile fracture, right? And the difference between these two energies is this much, right? So at a lower temperature, if I do a Charpy impact test for a steel, I might get 4 joules. So let's say I'm doing it at minus 196 degrees Celsius. Then I conduct a test here, which is at minus 10. And I might get a temperature of, the impact energy of 25 joules. And then I conduct a test at 100 degrees Celsius here. And I get an impact energy of 75 joules. So there is a transition of energy absorbed because brittle fracture is taking less energy. Here it's a combination of brittle and ductile fracture, and here it is completely ductile fracture. But this will not happen in FCC. FCC, you break here, you will get approximately, let's say, 50 joules. It should not be 50 joules because I defined this to be 25. So this will be approximately 15. So here it will be 15 joules. And then you test here again 15 or 16 joules. And here maybe 18 joules. So you will not see a difference. So why is this behavior different in FCC and is different in BCC? You can see it clearly that orange curve belongs to BCC and the green curves belongs to FCC and HCP. So why is that? Why do we see this difference? Pranjal?
Yes, sir.
You didn't hear the question?
Sir, I heard it, but could you repeat?
So what was the question?
So why is there such difference in impact energy between BCC and FCC?
So you heard right. So then tell me why it is there.
I'm not quite sure.
It's okay. You don't have to be sure. Give me some reason. Bolo.
Because of
Agle,
number of slip systems.
correct. See, I don't know why you are not saying this. This is the right answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. You should be a little confident about this. So, all right. So this is because BCC has got different slip systems which keep on activating at different temperatures. And FCC has got a very unique set of slip systems which are most packed slip systems in comparison to what you have got in BCC and in HCP. And usually they don't get deactivated unless you touch minus 196 or you can't go to absolute zero. But if you go to very, very low temperature, then actually you are stopping all the vibrations of atoms. So there, even if the slip system is there, it will not allow anything to move. So no movement will be allowed, or it will be too much restricted, then of course you can have lowering of energy, but there is no change in the slip systems. In FCC, there is no change in, or almost none in HCP also. The difference between HCP and FCC is, in HCP, you don't have many slip systems. So FCC is an extreme case which has the best slip systems you have got in the universe. HCP is a worst case where you don't have. So there are basically 3 slip systems, and those 3 slip systems are usually not activated once. And so in different HCPs, depending upon what is the C by A ratio is, there is either a prismatic plane, which is a slip plane, or pyramidal plane, which is a slip plane, or the basal plane, which is a slip plane. And usually slip is so tight that twinning occurs first, and twinning occurs until slipping becomes possible. So that is the difference, but these things, the scenario doesn't change for HCP and FCC much. So now you have this curve, and you generate this curve by doing impact testing, right? So what can you do by impact testing, and how do you define this transition? How can you define this transition? Why this is not going? Stubborn circle. Okay. So if I have this kind of curve, and on another axis, I can plot the so here I am plotting impact energy here, and here I can plot percentage of the area of the specimen, which is flat or fibrous. So flat will be brittle and fibrous will be, so let me write it fibrous then. So fibrous. So fibrous area will represent the ductile fracture, and we will see what area and how does it look fibrous after breaking the specimen. So it starts from 0. So that means you have no ductility on this axis, and then you go to 100. That means you have the whole area of the broken specimen is fibrous. So that means that the complete fracture is ductile. So based on this area, if you find out a place where you can say that 50%, you can find out a temperature where you can say that 50% of the broken specimen area is fibrous and 50% is flat. So it's half brittle, half ductile. So that temperature you call FATT, fracture appearance transition temperature. Okay. So this is one temperature which can be defined and assigned to certain material, and say that at this temperature you will have 50-50 ductility. So you will have 50% ductility, right? So this is based on area. Then you can have another temperature which you can define in the upper self. So let me define upper self. Upper self is this part. So here, if you keep on testing and increase the temperature, the curve will not increase any further. So it will reach a plateau, and then it will be a straight line basically. So what is happening is that it has reached its maximum, and now the energy is not going to increase. And so that is called upper shelf. Okay. And the lower part is of course called lower shelf. So here you have touched the minima, and the energy cannot go below 4 joules. Because I think it will not be measurable also by impact testing machine if it goes below 4 joules. So if it goes below 4 joules, that means you can break the steel sample with your hands, but you can't do it because the specimen is at -196 degrees Celsius. So you can use your hands with a glove, but not your bare hands. So there can be a temperature where the complete area is 100% fibrous. So that temperature you can define as FTP, fracture transition plastic temperature. Okay. So these are 2 temperatures which can be defined using the area, how the area of the specimen looks like. Based on energy, you can have different criteria of defining temperatures. And then there is a third criteria also. So the energy based criteria is, so I have this kind of curve which I got from impact energy with respect to temperature, right? And here what I do is I want to find out at 28 joules what is the temperature. Okay, and this temperature I can define as ductile to brittle transition temperature, DBTT. Okay, so this is ductile to brittle transition temperature. And then you can use 41 joule criteria also. So you find out at which temperature the energy is 41 joules. And then there is a third criteria, which is at 68 joules. Okay. So you can use any of these three, but you have to be in alignment with other researchers or industries, which criteria they are using. So related to this, is there any question? The basic question which I should be asking myself is that why there are three energy based criteria. So what should make sense to me is that I take temperature which defines the upper self, which is here. I take a temperature which defines the lower self, which is there. And then so this is TU upper self, TL lower self, and I define DBTT as an average of these two. So that would make sense to me, and that is something which people also do. But why do I have three energy based criteria instead of having one? Punika. Punika? Okay. So I'm expecting again the right answer from Pranjal. Pranjal?
Yes, sir.
You heard the question?
Yes, sir.
What is the question?
So why is there three different?
Yeah. Can you answer? Punika, if you're saying anything, it's not audible. Pranjal?
Yeah. So because of these three different temperatures are different, like upper.
See, if I'm saying that for any type of steel, I would take the ductile brittle transition temperature as that temperature where if I do the impact testing, I will get a value of 28 joules. Right? So I can live with that. Why will somebody say that no, 28 joule is not the right criteria, or it is not working out for me, and I want to define the temperature at 41 joules? Why should that happen? You understand? A temperature is being defined at a certain value of energy, and people are saying that at this energy, whatever is the temperature, we will take that as our reference temperature, and we will know. We can have the idea about the material. That fine. If somebody says the DBTT is minus 100 degrees Celsius, I would know that at this temperature, the material has got 28 joules of energy. If you define the criteria at 41 joules, then I will have an idea by hearing the temperature that fine, at this temperature, the energy is 41 joules. So then why there are three different criteria? Why not just one? Why can't everyone think that fine, we define it at 41 joules?
So maybe it depends on the temperature at which the material would be actually used in real life. So to be closer to,
Right. You're right. You are very right, which I also didn't think of, but that is a valid reason. Other reason which you can think of?
So when I studied ductile to brittle transition temperature, it was given that at much lower temperatures, uh, it's it converts to brittle material very fast. That's why it must be some.
But that is what is happening irrespective. So this is why we have this criteria, that there is a transition from brittle to ductile. But the question, Pranjal, is that why there are 3 different criteria instead of having just one criteria.
so maybe to minimize the error also when we are trying to extrapolate the value of the energy at some other temperature compared to the temperature at which it has 28 or 41 joules of energy. Because this curve itself is very, uh, I would say, a fancy looking curve, not a straight line. So extrapolating would involve a lot of error if we don't have a value, reference value that is close to the temperature we require.
So Gaurav, it is not a straight line, but you can extrapolate other curves also which are not a straight line. It's a sigmoidal curve, and you can define a sigmoidal curve by a mathematical equation, and then you can extrapolate values. So that is not an issue. So what Gaurav said was that you are getting, let's say, the transition temperature at minus 100 degrees Celsius, but you also want to know that how much will be the impact energy at 200 degrees Celsius. So if you are given just this information about the temperature, you will not be able to fathom what should be the temperature at 200 degrees Celsius. So in order to do that, you should be given the whole curve, right? So if you imagine, if you think that there can be a transition, there can be a situation where my material in the application will break at brittle fracture, then you want to know what is the impact energy. So let's say if you are running a machine, it works in the range of minus 50 to 0 degrees Celsius. So you are working in a marine environment in Pacific somewhere where it is very cold, or in Alaska somewhere, and you want to know that if your things will break or not. You know that your 50% ductility, or you know that the transition temperature for 28 joules is minus 120 degrees Celsius. So you have this idea that fine, at minus 120 degrees Celsius, I have 28 joules. But what is the energy at minus 50 degrees Celsius? And how much load I am applying on my machine? So you want to be sure that it will not break. So that could be one reason because of which you can have this 3 criteria. Another reason which is usually industry imposed is that certain components are designed, and their design criteria is that this material should have energy more than 50 joules. So engineers, they don't want to create a curve and then extrapolate, and they don't do it. They just want the value. So if they have the value for 41 joules, they can be sure that fine, at 41 joules, this is the temperature. So at this temperature, obviously, I will have more than this. Or they can also work with 68 joules criteria. So if it is 68 joules, they are always okay because it is always higher than 50 joules. So they should always take the temperature for 68 joules more than that. So they will keep the operating temperature more than that. Okay. So all these are to ease the situation. But then there is another reason. For certain set of materials, you cannot always get 68 joules. So one problem was that we were using sub-size samples, right? So 55 cross 10 cross 5. So if my 10 cross 10 sample is giving me an energy of 100 joules, then half thick sample should be giving me 50 joules. It is not like that. Okay, it is just to demonstrate this, but there is a lot going on here, so it will not be half of it because of microstructural reasons. So Also microstructural reasons, also because of the notch. So if my subsize specimen will be lower than or equal to 50 joules, right? And then if I use another subsize which is only 5 millimeters thick, yeah, so 5 I have done, so then you can have 2.5, so that will be 25 joules. So if I am conducting, if I am trying to make this curve with a specimen which is only 2.5 millimeter thick, I cannot use this criteria because I will never achieve that energy in my specimen. I might also not achieve this energy. If I'm doing an impact test on a grade of material which is fine, BCC, but it still doesn't achieve a very high amount of energy. It is very brittle. So I can have martensitic steel, which probably will always be brittle, a high carbon steel, or I can have cast iron, which will always be brittle. I mean, it will never becomes very ductile as mild steel would be, or as dual phase steel would be. So for those things, so in the whole regime of transition temperature, for that we might have impact energy for a small energy which will finish here. So the upper shelf will be somewhere here, and this upper shelf will be smaller than 68 joules. So what will you do? You will have to find a criteria for that, and here 28 joule criteria will work, right? So this is why we have these two criteria. Now I will explain one more, and after that, Abhinesh, we can start the testing now, or it will take some time. Abhinesh, are you there?
Yes, sir.
So can we start, let's say in 2-3 minutes?
Sir, we can start in 5 to 7 minutes. Actually, Rupinder sir is in the other lab. They are there to actually make.
All right, no issues. So we will take a break of 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, after this, and then we will start the testing.
Yes, sir.
So everything is ready. Who is that?
Yes,
Ayush?
everything is ready.
The tripod there?
Yes, sir. We have.
Okay, all right. So that was about the energy criteria, and then there is a third criteria which is called lateral strain. And so this is my specimen. This is my specimen, right? And then I hit it. So the hammer hits it from here, right? It hits it and it breaks. So if we capture it very, very, very slowly, then it will look, after hitting the hammer, it will deform like this. And then it will break. Okay, so a crack will start and it will break the specimen. Broken specimen, so X, Y, Z, and so we are in XY plane for this figure. For this figure, we are in XY plane. And now if you look at YZ plane at the cross section, so that cross section will look like, so I will have a notch here. And this will be somewhat resembling the broken specimen. Okay, so this part is the notch part. And you will not get a complete this kind of picture, but this is the cross section, and here you will see some fibrous dull region, so it is not very shiny. And then you might see an elevation, a fracture and shear. Whenever there is a fracture at the end, you always see a shear lip. So this region will be shear lip region, and here you might have a complete flat. No, don't do that. Yeah, a complete flat fracture. So this would be the brittle part. This would be the fibrous or ductile part, but usually it will not happen that a crack will start with ductile and it will become brittle. No, it can happen. The opposite cannot happen. So this is usually what will happen, but because of, so let's say if you have some amount of ductility, what will happen is that, so initially the cross section is 10 cross 10, right? So this is 10 and that is 10. But after deformation, the notch is like this, and then it will have this kind of feature. So original looking specimen would probably was something like this. So this was initially 10 cross 10. And after breaking, it has become like this. Okay. Why it has become like this? That involves a lot of mechanics and all, but you simply can imagine that somebody is trying to break it, right? So these parts are in tension. So these parts are being pulled apart. So material is being pulled apart from here. So from somewhere the material has to come in, right? So the material is being demanded. So you can imagine this to be the front of the army where the material is being pulled apart, right? That place, this place, and this place is same. Okay. And material is being asked at the front. People are required. So they can ask the people from this direction because the surface is very close, or from that direction, right? So either people can come from this direction or from that direction. So this direction, so this dimension is much away and constrained from the crack tip or the notch tip, but the adjacent surfaces are closer to the crack front. So the material is being pulled, sinking in where they are getting pulled apart. So because of that, there will be a sinking, and to keep the volume in constancy in the flow, it will take this kind of shape. So this amount by which this has, sunk in is called the lateral strain. And that is also a measurement of how much ductile the material is. If the material is more ductile, it will be sinking in more. If the material is brittle, then this sinking will not happen. It will be of a very insignificant amount if it is a complete brittle fracture. You understand this part? So this lateral strain can also be used as a criteria of defining how much ductile or how much brittle the material is. And this is used in British standard. Also, it is used for defining the brittle fracture in a different kind of regime where, so we will talk about that maybe when we do, if we can do the testing on fracture toughness, we'll talk about that there. But so far, so lateral strain is the strain here, right? So initially you had, so from center, if you want to find out, this dimension was 10, right? And then after testing, you have this dimension, which is 8 mm. So how much is the total displacement on half side, which has happened, is 2 millimeters. So delta U is 2 millimeters divided by, oh, it was not 10, it was 5. And then, so it should be 5, and maybe it is 4. So then you have delta U is equal to 1 divided by the total half length was 5. So this is your lateral strain, right? So this can be a measurement of ductility and the amount of ductility. Okay. Any question? No question? Kunika, you understood everything?
Good.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any doubt?
सर आई हैड वन डाउट सर ये नॉट्स की क्या जरूरत आप पड़ी सर प्लेन बार क्यों नहीं यूज कर सकते थे?
किसकी जरूरत?
नॉच नॉच
नॉच की जरूरत, because we want to start with the assumption that there is a flaw. Okay,
So
so the
could you
whole
repeat?
idea, yeah,
Could you repeat that point?
because we want to have this assumption, which is also reality, that usually in the components there is a flaw already. So fracture mechanics और failure analysis इस चीज से start होता है कि crack already component में है, और ये practical इसलिए है क्योंकि even if you can make something which is flawless, and that is a costly affair, but even if you can make something which is flawless, at some point of time there will be a flaw, right? And in reality, what are the flaws? How do you create a crack? So if something is completely good, then the crack will come while it is being used in the system. Sometimes, let's say you have a pipe, and on that pipe you are putting it on the inside underground somewhere, and because of something there is a scratch on that pipe. That scratch will act as a notch, and so notch is not a very sharp crack. Why do we put sharp crack in the system? Because we want to be conservative. So we want to find out कि worst case क्या होगा, ठीक है? So reality में जो crack रहेगा वो इतना sharp नहीं रहता है, और हमारे पास time ज़्यादा रहेगा. So factor of safety is already there. Are you convinced?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we just broke one sample, and there are few things which I didn't tell you. So one is that I told you that we can do it at different temperature, and we can plot that impact energy versus temperature curve. The standard of American standard is E28 for this test. And if you are making a temperature, so let's say if you are doing it at minus 30 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Celsius, so the criteria is you have to put the sample within 5 seconds on the sample place, and you have to hit the hammer. So within 5 seconds, it should be broken. Otherwise, usually metallic materials are conductive, so they will lose the temperature. So you think that you are doing the test at 100 degrees Celsius, and actually the temperature would be 90 degrees Celsius. Okay. And you see there is this box, I think this is the bar.
Yes, sir. This is the sir bath, and for this maintaining the temperature, we use acetone and liquid nitrogen both. We use basically acetone with liquid nitrogen because liquid nitrogen evaporates so easily, and by this tongue, we just collect this sample from this bath and put it here in very few seconds to test the sample. And this is the temperature indicator. And one thing that I forgot to tell you, that this angle of this pendulum is 140 degree, and the weight is 21.3 kg of this hammer, pendulum hammer. And sir,
Yeah.
next sample also.
So you note it down. The angle of the hammer is 140 degrees, and the weight of the hammer is 21.3 kgs. This will help you to calculate what I have given you as an assignment.
रुको सर, मैं करता हूँ.
So we have And basically, this is a normal brake, scooter brake, drum brake. So now this time welding is 33.1. And sir, actually, this reading will change due to some vibration. Ground vibration. We are putting in third quarter.
दोनों वैल्यू लिखो 33.1 इसके पहले का कितना 32.7
Yes, sir. 32. Makes sense.
So we are doing 3 tests and this is the usual protocol. Yes, Ashish, you want to ask something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I just wanted to ask, why is the angle of the pendulum matters that much?
So when you do that calculation, that how much energy will be required if there is a change in height, some energy is absorbed by the sample, right? And if you don't fix the hammer's angle fixed, then you might have different energies. Rho GH होता है ना potential energy.
सर बट जब ये कैलकुलेट कर रहा है तो ये कैलकुलेट कर रहा है कि यहाँ पे जो एनर्जी आई नीचे आते वक्त उसमें सैंपल ने कितना एब्जॉर्ब किया, तो वो ओवरऑल डेल्टा कैलकुलेट कर रहा है.
हाँ.
डेल्टा
तो डेल्टा कैलकुलेट कैसे करेगा?
तो वो उसमें नीचे जब आएगा तो पोटेंशियल एनर्जी 0 हो जाएगी लगभग, और काइनेटिक एनर्जी
देखो फ्री फॉल में उसका काइनेटिक एनर्जी होगा कुछ उस पॉइंट पे पहुंचने का.
वो पॉइंट तो एकदम बेस पे, तो वहां पे तो पोटेंशियल एनर्जी तो काइनेटिक एनर्जी मैक्सिमम हो जाएगी.
हाँ, तो वो 0 नहीं, पोटेंशियल एनर्जी 0 है, राइट? काइनेटिक एनर्जी मैक्सिमम है, ठीक है.
यस सर. और फिर उसके बाद जैसी सैंपल ब्रेक हुआ तो उसने कुछ एनर्जी एब्जॉर्ब करी, और उसके बाद फाइनल वेलोसिटी मेजर कर लेंगे तो डिफरेंस से आ जाएगा कितनी एब्जॉर्ब.
वेलोसिटी कहाँ मेजर कर रहे हैं इसमें? हम इसमें क्या मेजर कर रहे हैं? मशीन इज जस्ट नोटिंग डाउन द हाइट, टू व्हाट हाइट द हैमर इज गोइंग आफ्टर ब्रेकिंग द सैंपल. अगर इसको बिना सैंपल के छोड़ दिया तो इट विल गो टू सर्टेन हाइट and that on dial should give you a value of 0 joules. It is not usually 0 because there is some air friction, right?
Okay.
Then you put the sample, it will not go to that height, it will go to a lesser height. So wo jo delta H aaya, that is representing how much energy is absorbed in the specimen failure.
Okay sir.
ये calculation करो तब समझ में आएगा. So the value is 34.2. So these values hopefully you have noted down. If not, we will send you. And then you see the broken specimen, right? And here you see these sharp things. That is the shear leg, which I told you in the first part of the session. And if you can see, we will send you a picture also from a good camera. So you see that the whole region is completely fibrous. So so it is a rough surface, which means that it is a ductile fracture. And because of that, if we have, if you compare this cross section, the end cross section with the broken one, you see that there is a trapezoidal kind of formation. So at the tip of the notch, there is some amount of strain. So there is some compression which has happened. So that is what is lateral strain. Okay. So we will give you this picture with a scale bar so that you can calculate how much is the lateral strain and energy you have got, and so these two calculations you should report in the laboratory report. Okay, any question? So there are a few practical things related to the test. First is that you should mark the specimen on both ends, because when it is brittle fracture, samples usually are thrown away and you cannot find out the broken part and know that the broken part belongs to which specimen. So you should mark it on the both sides. And then there are some safety requirements for this machine. So you should not be very close to this machine if you are doing the test at any point of time. And you should always allow the person, a technical staff who is trained to do this kind of test should only be helping you. You should not operate as long as it is not required by you. Okay. So we will send you some questions related to this experiment, and those questions also you should write the answers for. These are not numerical questions, and you should write that in your report. Okay, any doubts so far? कुछ डाउट है? Ashish, Gaurav?
No, sir.
No doubt, everything is clear. Okay then. So we end this session here, and we will send you the pictures. We will send you the energy values and some questions which you should be writing along with introduction, procedure, the calculation which I have given you, and the answers to the questions, and the impact energy and lateral strain. All these things you should mention in the lab report and submit it by next Wednesday. All right. So then we conclude this session.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Vertical कर लो क्या? सही. So keep your phones in landscape mode, and then you will see. So you can use the hammer. इस पे लगा दीजिए. इधर नीचे नहीं मालिक.
This is your sample mount. We place our sample here.
उनको
Now we are placing sample simply like this and center it by this. By this one.
What are we doing, Surya? You have to keep the notch at the center.
Impact testing machine. So this is our impact testing machine, and this is our hammer. Our hammer, ballpoint hammer, which radius is 2 mm, and the weight of this hammer is 2.13 kg. And in this test, the maximum energy up to we can go is 300 joules. So in this experiment, we place this specimen horizontally, just opposite to this our striker, opposite side of our striker, and our sample here, and now we can start our experiment. Here there is two display. One is analog and one is digital. And digital signal will goes through this encoder, which is set with the coupling with this hammer shaft. So now we set it to 0. Here. Test HRP and start. And now. So here it's 32.7 joules and approximately here also.
Any question?
Yes, sir. I could.
You could. So you have any doubt?
Sir, I have one doubt, sir.
Yeah.
बड़ी सर
किसकी?
प्लेन बाहर क्यों नहीं यूज कर सकते थे?
किसकी जरूरत?
Notch.
नॉच
Notch की जरूरत. Because we want to start with the assumption that there is a flaw. Okay. So the whole idea, yeah.
Could you repeat that point?
Because क्योंकि even if you can make something which is flawless, and that is a costly affair, but even if you can make something which is flawless, at some point of time there will be a flaw, right? And in reality, what are the flaws? How do you create a crack? So if something is completely good, then the crack will come while it is being used in the system. Sometimes, let's say you have a pipe, and on that pipe you are. So notch is not a very sharp crack. Why do we put sharp crack in the system? Because we want to be conservative. So we want to find out the worst case क्या होगा, ठीक है? So reality में जो crack रहेगा वो इतना sharp नहीं रहता है, और हमारे पास time ज़्यादा रहेगा. So factor of safety is already there. Are you convinced?
Yes, sir.
Oh, standard. Otherwise, usually metallic materials are conductive, so they will lose the temperature. So you think that you are doing the test at 100 degrees Celsius, and actually the temperature would be 90 degrees Celsius or so.
For this maintaining the temperature, we use acetone and liquid nitrogen both. We use basically acetone with liquid nitrogen because liquid nitrogen evaporates so easily. And by this term, we just collect this sample from this bath and put it here in very few seconds to test the sample. And this is the temperature indicator. And one thing that I forgot to tell you, that this angle of this pendulum is 140 degree, and the weight is 21.3 kg of this hammer, pendulum hammer. And so, test. Start. And basically this is a normal this brake, scooter brake, drum brake. So now this time the reading is 33.1, and certainly this reading will change due to some vibration, ground vibration. Actually they are not, we are putting in third floor, that's it.
Yes, Ashish, you want to ask something? Yeah. So when you do that calculation, that how much energy will be required, if there is a change in height, some energy is absorbed by the sample, right? And if you don't fix the hammer's angle fixed, then you might have different energies.
बोलो सर.
This hammer we use for this Sharpie. This is a farming type hammer, and this is again ball pen type hammer, which is used for Sharpie test, and this is used for IOZ, and this is for centering the sample. And we have two samples. This one is for this Sharpie test,
Velocity कहाँ measure करना है?
and this one is for this IOZ.
हम इसमें क्या measure करते हैं?
So in IOZ test we put sample like this,
What height the hammer is going after
like this, and the hammer strike here, and
अगर इसको
in
बिना sample के छोड़ दिया,
in IOZ test,
and that on
in
dial
IOZ
should
test,
give you a value of 0 joules.
the samples fix here and the striker strikes here, and in Sharpie test the sample placed here,
Right.
and the striker
Then you put the sample, it will not go to that
strike
height.
just opposite to the
Lesser height.
notch.
तो वो जो डेल्टा है नेक्स्ट So the value is 34.2. Hopefully you have noted down. If not, we will send you. So if you compare this cross section, the end cross section with the broken one, you see that there is a trapezoidal kind of formation. So at the tip of the notch, there is some amount of strain. So there is some compression which has happened. So that is what is lateral strain. Okay. So we will give you this picture with a scale bar so that you can calculate how much is the lateral strain. Practical things related to the test. First is that you should mark the specimen on both ends, because when it is brittle fracture, samples usually are thrown away and you cannot find out the broken part.